Right, guys, joining me now is Dr. Alex George. Dr. Alex George, good morning. How are you? Are you well?
I'm really well, thanks. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us. Right, so we're going to be speaking about prioritizing our mental health and physical wellness
Mm,
routines. Right, so let's just dive straight into everything and we'll
mm.
get straight into it. So, why do so many of us struggle to maintain healthy habits once the clocks go back?
Yeah, so there's been research actually by Holland and Barrett into this, and around a third of people, when the clocks go back, struggle to maintain their kind of well-being habits. So kind of the time outdoors, or their exercise, or the social connection stuff drops off, and about 60% of them are saying that the shorter days, the darkness, the cold weather are really linking into that. And around half saying that instead they end up spending more time on the sofa at home. And I think the first thing I'd say is that that's really natural. Don't never shame yourself for that. I think our natural instinct when it's cold and wet outside is to spend less time outside. But I think what's important is to recognize the impact that can have. So we are learning so much more, I think, as a society that our physical and our mental health is benefited by lots of connection, by eating relatively well, getting enough sleep, being outdoors, having natural light, and moving our bodies. Those are the kind of core aspects of health. And what we're seeing is that we go into the winter, that gets dropped off. So what we need to do is acknowledge it, acknowledge the challenge, and then plan. And the Scandinavian countries do this pretty well. They kind of acknowledge the fact it's difficult. They make their homes very comfy and cozy so that when they are indoors, it's a nice place to be. It's supportive for our well-being. But they also make sure they plan things like, exercise classes, opportunities to be around other people,
Hmm.
keep going with the exercise, wrapping up, literal things like, if it's wet outside, going out for the morning walk or midday walk and it's not that nice weather, it's really wrapping up and, being prepared almost to kind of get out there and spend time outside. And it is important and it does matter. Other little things you can look at as well. So actually, Holland Barrett's got these sunshine booths that I visited one. They got in, I think, Cardiff, London, and Manchester in their stores that you can check out. And basically, within them, they've got the light therapy lamps, and people talk about this. And so I think it's worth like mentioning, how it works. So basically,
SAD lights, is it?
yeah, so some people call it that, but yeah, light lamps is
Mm.
the kind of technical phrase. Fun enough, they emit light. So basically, it's white light is the frequency of light, so 10,000 lux and above, and you're supposed to kind of have 20, 30 minutes in the morning. The reason it benefits is because natural light is important, not just because it's nice to be outside, but because also natural light hits the back of our eyes, our retinal cells, which then tells the brain it's morning, it's daytime, sets our circadian rhythm, so our 24-hour clock, and it suppresses melatonin. That's important because melatonin is our sleep hormone. We want melatonin to be high in the evening, low in the morning. When it's dark and miserable, we're not outside, the brain's confused. So melatonin can be high, which is why often in the winter people feel very groggy and sleepy. And also light is very important at boosting serotonin, so our mood hormone. So 20, 30 minutes in the morning of these lamps can be helpful for some people in boosting the mood and making you feel better. So often it's just little things, it's small things that kind of add up and make a difference. But it's acknowledging it's the first bit of it. I think as Brits, we do moan about the weather as we should, but we
Yes.
don't sometimes acknowledge what is happening and what perhaps we need to do.
Yeah, and do you think Scandinavian countries, because obviously in the winter months they spend so much of their time in the
Absolutely.
darkness, are a really good kind of model for us to kind of look at?
Definitely, definitely. I actually had on my podcast, the Stompcast, I had someone who's an expert in kind of winter well-being, and was talking about this that they are just so much better prepared because they know that that time is coming and it's going to be really
Hmm.
dark. So they acknowledge the fact it's going to be difficult, which is the first thing because you cannot take an action or change something without acknowledging that there is something that you need to work on. So they
Exactly.
know it's coming, and then they make plans. As I say, they make the internal home as comfortable as possible, having like candles and
Hmm.
making it cozy and making that environment somewhere you enjoy being because you're going to spend more time indoors. But they also make sure they create plans, particularly for kind of social connections, a big one for them. So in the summer, if you finish work and it's a sunny day, you say, "Oh, come on, let's go to the park. It's lovely." In the winter, you just don't really do that, or you end up, indoors in environments. So it's thinking, right, well, I need to plan instead. So what about an exercise class on a Saturday, or why not a coffee and walk with my mates on a Saturday? You have to basically plan a bit more. There's less natural opportunity for connection. So to counteract, you have to kind of plan it basically, which for people that don't like planning can be a bit boring, but you basically need to.
No, and I totally get that. And with obviously everything you've mentioned so far, what small realistic changes do you think people can actually make to keep active without, braving the cold? I know you said wrapping up more, but you might have some really kind of practical ideas.
Yeah, so I talk about bookending your day. So the middle of the day is your stress, it's your work, it's your things you need to do. So
Hmm.
bookend it with things that are good for your body and your brain, basically. So in the morning, I get up, grab my dog Rolo, and we head outside for a 15, 20-minute walk. Even if the weather's not very nice, we get outside because he needs to, and it's good for me. And then, in the middle of the day, you've got your kind of work and so on. And then I end the day, and that's what I'll do today, with going to the gym. Actually, to be fair, it's ironically quite sunny at the moment, so I might go out for a run later. But I end the day with a form of movement. So the trigger for the habit is the working day ending. Before I kind of end up on the couch in a comfortable place, and it's very difficult to get up from there. I
Yeah.
put my movement in there for that part of the day, and then after that, it is learning to unwind well in the evening. The big one I would say in the winter, and what we see going up is phone usage. So the average 25-year-old is on their phone around 6 hours a day. That's a lot. And in the winter, we can see people's screen times rocketing higher. And
Hmm.
that's really important. So some of the winter stuff is about what you do, and some of it's about what you don't do. So it's just being aware that we have a tendency to be on our phones. So trying
Yeah.
to swap that out with things that are creative, painting, drawing, reading, playing music, anything really that's not being on your phone, and having a really good wind down routine for bed. And that can be as simple as having low lights in the room, having a bath or a shower before bed to kind of relax you and stuff, and then and making sure that again we're not having anything too stimulating before bed in terms of screen time. So sometimes it's just simple things. Often it's not. In well-being, we often look for these big things to kind of fix how we feel, but most
Yes.
of it is the compounding effect of little things. And I think when we realize that and put the little things in action, you get much bigger results, I think, without sounding
Yeah.
cliche.
No, no, no. I totally agree with you. And I think like being, like you said, some people don't like being organized or structured or planned, but I think we both know, and obviously you know probably better than anyone
Mm,
else, how important it is to have that structure.
mm,
I think what you said as well, kind of planning the end of your day is something really, really good because
mm,
how many people do you think they get home from work and they kick their shoes off and they get on the sofa? I used to have a thing when I worked in professional sport. My rule was 30 minutes. I would
mm.
get in, I would be knackered, I'd have 30 minutes, and I had to be out the door at the gym. That was
Brilliant.
my rule.
That's
So
so
it's little
good.
things like that, just structure, because I knew
Mm.
if I stop, I drop.
Exactly. I mean, what you're talking about there is perfect in terms of discipline. So your kind of habit formation is motivation at the start, which is you wanting to do something. Motivation on average lasts 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes even less. Then you need to
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
discipline come in. Discipline's not about, it's not the carrot, the stick. It's just giving yourself a framework that allows you to stick at the habit. So that's a great example. Other people say like taking the gym kit to work. So on the way home, they walk
Yes,
past the gym,
of
going to the
course.
gym, trying to make it as easy as possible to stick at the discipline. And then when you're disciplined for a period of time, it becomes a habit. They quote, the research studies say that's about 66 days, convenient number, that the
Mhm.
habit takes to be formed. But effectively, it takes a couple of months. Some habits
Yeah,
take a few weeks, but most habits, like exercise, will take a few months. So if you can stick at it for that period of time, you're more likely then to continue, and that is important. But one thing I would say though is that you don't have to have perfection around it. I mean,
consistency.
it's about being consistent, but not perfect. I mean, 80%'s enough, and on a Friday, if you're like, do you know what, I really don't want to go to the gym tonight. It's a lovely evening. I'm gonna put, Harry Potter on, or whatever it would be. Fine, that's absolutely fine. It's about what you do on average. It's not about being militant with it. And that's important because then you get into all or nothing thinking and thinking, well, if I don't do it perfect today, what's the point? And that's not helpful at all.
No, and you know what's really nice is what you're saying right now is everything that I preach to my clients. So 80-20 split is perfect. You
Mm,
know, it's all about consistency over long periods of
mm.
time. All or nothing never works
No,
because you
no,
always go back to old habits. So
absolutely.
sprinkle a little bit of fun and what you want to do into your life, and before you know it, you've got this perfect
Mm.
balance and everything flourishes around you.
I'm glad you say this. There's stuff like, people talk about sleep routine. Like, well, I need to sleep. We know that science says the best thing to do is to get up and
Yes.
go to bed at the same time. That's
Mm.
great, but life happens. So what are you going to do on a Friday when your friends say, do you want to go to let's go to the theatre. There's a great new show on. Let's go to
Yeah.
the theatre, but it finishes at 11, but your
Mm.
bedtime's 9:30 or 10. Are you
Yeah.
going to not go to the theatre? No, of course, go to the theatre.
Yes.
It's really important. That's where the 80-20 comes in. It's not about what you do on one night a week. It's about what you do for 5 or 6 nights the week that matter. So
Yeah.
I'd really say that to people. Just don't fall into the trap. And this is where January can be difficult with New Year's, is sometimes some people love New Year's resolutions, that's fine. But sometimes that can really kind of push this idea of, right, I've got to be militant and really rigid about this. But actually, flexibility is one of the best ways to actually maintain any kind of habit change.
Yeah, and then you get to sprinkle the fun stuff, right? And that's what
Exactly.
life's short. So we got to have as
Enjoy
much
it.
fun as we can, but without kind of going too crazy all the time.
Yeah.
Right, back onto the topics that we were talking about. So the lack of sunlight and shorter days, like
Mm.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you say that affects our mood and energy levels? Like
Oof,
quite a lot?
it's tough to give it a number, but I think,
Maybe not numerical then.
well, put it this way, around 1 million people in the UK are affected by seasonal affective disorder. And, that's, I mean, obviously that's quite a big number, but if you actually think about it this way, if I spoke to my family and friends, I thought about my mum and my dad and my best mates, and I thought of conversation, I said to them like, how do you find the winters? I'd say 80% of them would say the winters are more difficult, maybe even more. So that gives you
Mhm.
an idea, and that will vary from people for being a little bit annoying that it's shorter days and the weather's bad all the way through to actually really affecting their kind of health. So I think for people, it's a big effect. Vitamin D, for example, is very important for energy levels. Being outside, being in nature, being around people energizes you and motivates you. It's like the idea, of often people think that movement makes you tired. Movement doesn't make you tired, it actually energizes you. So, being outside, being with people is really important. So I think it is a huge impact. We can't do anything about the clocks. We can't do anything about the
No.
weather, but we can control our own controllables. So
Yeah.
I think it's like I'm saying, I think it really is about acknowledge it's difficult, make a plan, build your own kind of toolkit, what that looks like. What is it that helps you through the winter? You can try things like the light lamp therapy. Certainly consider vitamin D. That's very important. Check obviously before taking any supplements. The doctor, but vitamin D is generally recommended for most people, particularly around the winter. And yeah, just build up that kind of toolkit that supports you through that time, and talk to people as well. Ask people like what works for them, what do your mates do. Surprising, like you can learn a lot just from just talking to people in your circle as to what they use that helps support them, because you'll find a lot of people going through the same thing.
And what signs are there that you might have low vitamin D? Are there any in particular?
So I think it's quite non-specific, because a lot of the signs you might see can be caused by lots of things. But typically when we're talking about kind of, for example, seasonal affective disorder, so winter depression, it's kind of low mood, low energy, lethargy, and so on. So low vitamin D can have similar symptoms to that, really. So kind of low energy levels. But obviously that's quite difficult to tie down, because there's lots of reasons
Of
people's
course.
energies might be low. So that is why the NHS says that unless you're told otherwise by your doctor, it's advised that you should take it through the winter months and
Mm.
end of autumn through the winter months, vitamin D, because so many people are affected by it. So it's trying to like it's trying to react to the most, or plan for the most likely things that might affect your kind of mood levels. But as a simple test measure, if you woke up in the morning and it was dark in your room and you went straight on the laptop and started working immediately and going on Zoom calls,
Mhm.
how do you feel? I know that when I've done that before, I feel lethargic, tired, confused. I just feel like I've not even had a moment. And
Yeah.
whereas if I get up and go outside, how do I feel when I come back? I'm energized, happy, motivated, ready to start the day. So obviously that's anecdotal experience, but
Hmm.
it's a good way, I say to people in general, if you're trying to work out what works, do something and ask yourself, how do I feel afterwards? With food, I'm sure you talk about this with food and stuff. It's like, if you're going to eat something after how do you feel when you eat it? How do you feel immediately after you've eaten
Hmm.
that thing? And then the next day, how do you feel? And you
Yeah.
can score it 1 to 10, very simple scoring system. Then change what you're eating to something else and see how you feel. Do the same thing. And then you quickly work out what foods help you feel good and what foods make you feel less good. And it's not,
Hmm.
again, not about avoiding all of those all the time, because you might want to treat or whatever it is, but it's going, well, actually, I know when I eat this kind of food, I personally don't feel good. Whereas if I have this, I feel great.
Yeah, and I think with the winters, right, it's not our first winter, but trial and error. Like we as humans, I think, are becoming so much more switched on, and we care so much more about our
Mm.
health and well-being. I think things like this are becoming more and more kind of at the forefront, especially when the winter months are coming. It is now, in my eyes, like you said, trial and error, kind of seeing what works. Didn't enjoy that, but actually that made me feel good. So I know that I've got to do a little bit more of that before, I can rule it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, speaking of foods, obviously you mentioned food. Are there any foods or nutrients people need help boosting with their immune systems and their energy throughout the colder months?
Well, I think it's it's a slightly boring answer, but important. It's about trying to make sure you have as much colors of fruit and veg as you possibly can. Because there's like to single out certain vitamins is difficult because they all play a role. You know, when vitamin C, when vitamin K, vitamin D,
Yeah.
all of these things are important. Vitamin D, for example, you can get some from oily fish, but really, in reality, it's quite difficult to get enough vitamin D from those sources. But in general, and that's where supplements can come in. But supplements' role is to supplement food. So getting the food right is an
Yes.
important starter. So it's thinking about looking at a plate. Have I got protein on my plate? Have I got some sort of carb that's ideally one that will, give you longer energy? So, it might be something like brown rice, sweet potato, whatever it might be. And do I have a colourful variety of, veg on the plate from your peppers and so on to your mushrooms, greens
Hmm.
and things? It sounds really boring, but actually it is the foundational thing that matters. And my grandmother always used to say, and I remember like kind of rolling my eyes, look, you need to have like colourful plate, come on, the rainbow plate. And I'd be like, come on, Nan, this is boring.
Yeah.
But actually, she was right. And bear in mind, she was way, like she was saying this well before well-being was even a word that
Hmm.
anyone talked about. But she was right. Like eating what would grow in your garden, or what someone
In
could
the
farm,
ground or
and
whatever.
making
Yeah.
sure you have that, particularly through the winter months. But in general, um, is really important. And I think if we can go back to that as much as possible, that would help. Obviously, people are talking a lot about ultra processed foods. Look, I believe, in my opinion, it's impossible to cut them all out. It would be very difficult
Agreed.
to have a realistic life to do that. There's varying levels of whether how quote unquote bad some are versus others. But I think it's as best as you possibly can, trying to bring in where possible. Your unprocessed stuff that's greens and veggies, and I think all of that stuff supports your general health, not just in the winter, but all year round, I guess.
Yeah. And right. So my next question, I'm going to quickly divert. So going back onto what we said at the start,
Mm,
about habits and starting your day and whatnot, walking pads. As days get darker, are you a fan of a walking pad? Do you think it's a really good idea?
mm,
I suggest it because I think it's safer than going out, depending on where you live. If you
yeah,
don't live near any street lights or anything like that, then I think it's a good idea. But what are your views on them, especially in the winter months, to
yeah,
keep moving or
yeah.
just to keep energized and exercised?
Well, look, safety is the main priority. So, as you said, I think you've got to make an assessment. Is it safe for me to walk in the dark? If there's any concerns, take the safest option. So, obviously, walking paths do have a role there. And in ideal, you want to be outside because we know that obviously I've literally talked about all the kind of important points of why having
Hmm.
natural light's important, but having some sort of movement's also helpful. You could even potentially combine that with, light lamps, for example, to get some of the benefits of natural light. But yeah, absolutely, even that is beneficial. And having things like images of being able to see nature is helpful. So if you can do the walking pad by a window, that's helpful. There's studies that have been done that have shown that patients who are near the window in hospitals recover quicker than those that are away from the window.
Really?
So even seeing nature can be beneficial towards your health, and there are quite a few studies have replicated that finding. So the best option is being outside walking, but we have to mitigate for safety, weather, and all those things. So
Yeah.
the next best thing is important. Is it
Yeah.
important to keep moving? Yes. So walking pads definitely have a role.
Okay. Right. We are super short on time, so we're probably going to only have time for maybe one more question.
Cool. Awesome.
What are the key pillars of winter wellness that people should purely focus on? You've brushed upon lots of information. Let's
Mm.
maybe a few bullet points
Yeah.
just to close off.
Try and find opportunity for being outdoors at some point in your day. If that's not in the morning, try and get it to be like 10 o'clock to pop outside, or lunchtime at work. If you're like working in a hospital, like I used to in A&E, it wouldn't be possible to get out in the morning until I had my break. So I go outside at lunchtime. So get
Mhm.
natural light when you can. Always try and think in the winter months, find opportunities for natural light. If you can't get enough, think about things. Use tech, for example, lamp lights we've talked
Yeah.
about. Try and keep up with the movement. We often move less in winter, so find opportunities to move. And even better if you can move with other people. So weekend coffee
Okay.
meets, or going to gym classes. It's finding opportunities for movement. And I think the third thing is just actually acknowledging that it's a difficult time of year. So I go back to this point. The Scandinavians acknowledge that it's difficult and they plan for it. So we can take that approach and it will help us.
Honestly, Alex, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
You've been a star, super insightful. So thank you so much.
Thanks so
Really
much. Have a
appreciate your
wonderful
time.
day. Thank you.
Thank you guys. You
See you
take care.
later. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.